Welcome back to episode 2 of Take Your Life Back. This is the Ditch Your Holiday Stress series, and today I am delighted to welcome Kristina Hallett. I'm Beth Genly, your host, and Kristina Hallett is a board-certified clinical psychologist, an associate professor at Baypath University in Massachusetts, and an executive coach. And to top that off, she's the author of not one, but 2 books, one called Be Awesome, and the other one called Own Best Friend, which are just rocking titles. I love them. Welcome, Kristina Hallett.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm glad you're here too. So we're here to talk about not being crazy stressed over the holidays. And I gather this is not your first rodeo discussing this.
Yeah, no, not at all. So I've actually been working in the field for over 25 years. Mm-hmm. And that's in terms of my clinical work, in terms of teaching, supervising other mental health professionals. But I'm older than 25, probably hard to believe, but in fact I am. And so I have been living my own life of how to manage stress, how to deal with the holidays, how to sort of have your best life on an ongoing basis. And believe me when I say I actively use the techniques that I talk about all the time.
Great. So one of the things that we talked about when we were getting ready for this is compassion fatigue, that some of us come into the holidays already having the cares of the world on our shoulders, it feels like. And how do we summon up any holiday spirit in the face of that?
Compassion fatigue is a very real thing. When we're, as human beings, involved in the lives of other people and in the world, one of the things that can happen is that we're giving. And particularly if you're somebody who's working in any sort of helping profession. So that just doesn't mean just being a nurse or a doctor or a clinician, but any kind of helping profession. Then absolutely, at some point, there's that, what else do I have to give? And of course, as human beings, we've got to take charge. We're the only person, in fact, who's responsible for our own lives. Now, another word that people often use for compassion fatigue that's a little more common is burnout. So when you think burnout, you're like, oh yeah, right. No, I know what that is. Sure. Mm-hmm. I've had that experience. So compassion fatigue can be really understood in a similar way to burnout. And it's literally when we've been giving so much out and not taking enough in. Mm-hmm. And so when we think about something like approaching the holidays, boy, that's a real opportunity to be feeling the effects of that. Because we've got a whole lot of sort of external ideas, maybe those shoulds about how the holidays should be or what other people should be doing, and our own expectations. What are we bringing to that? Mm-hmm. And when we've been giving and not filling our own well, then we can find this real disconnect between what am I anticipating coming up? What do I feel like I have to give? And how can I even sort of go forward another day and even imagine that?
Mm-hmm. So let's assume that I'm feeling that way. I've showed up in your office and I've given everything I've got. And now I've got the holidays sailing in on me, and I'm a mom and I'm running an office, and holy smokes, where do I find whatever it takes to make that work for people?
Yeah. So the very first thing that I want to talk with you about is, what are you doing for you? Mm-hmm. And the bottom line piece that we all need to understand is that each one of us is responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, and actions. But in reality, we're not responsible for anyone else's thoughts, feelings, and actions. Now, we often don't live that way. Particularly, we talk about this a lot for women who are, they're workers, they're moms, they may be partners or spouses. And so it's like, well, but of course I need to take care of this one and help that one out, and I have friends. And so often we find that we're last on our own list, if we're even on the list at all. So the number one place we're going to start is, well, where are you? Are you on your list? And are you in your top 3 even? And sort of how can we begin to literally make that be real? And part of that comes from, and that's really sort of the content of Own Best Friend, right? It's 8 steps to a life of purpose, passion, and ease. But it starts from this whole idea of what is it that I need to do to be able to feel that I can value myself enough to be on my own list and to take care of my needs, to refill my own bucket. Because an empty bucket doesn't serve anybody, right? Right? In fact, the lower sort of the volume in my bucket, the less I have to give to anybody else. And I literally don't have anything. So we've got to really be able to acknowledge the importance and be willing to take on that refill of our own bucket. So sometimes that means, what's something I can say no to? Right? And I've written a few articles over the years about this very thing in regard to the holidays. So it's like, where's a place that you can say no? Right? I think of this idea of just because someone asks you to dance, you don't have to say yes. Right? We don't have to absolutely take on everything that someone asks us. And often we'll think, well, but what if they get mad or they don't like me or, oh, again, but I should. How about instead saying, is this something that I feel that I have the willingness and the capacity and the interest to do? And appropriately, is this going to add to my life? Now, it might add to my life. Let's say I'm volunteering at a charity event. So that might add to my life by doing something that's giving to others in a way that's sort of important from a value perspective. So great, say yes to that. But if it's 4 charity events and 8 parties and getting something ready for the PTO, and now I'm going to be chair of the indoor field hockey league, something's got to give, because none of us have all of that to give without being able to then say, what are the decisions that make sense for me? So that's the very first thing we would talk about is, what are you doing for you? Are you on your list? What are some things that you might be able to say no to that maybe aren't bringing you huge joy, right? Or that just don't, and it's okay. It is totally okay to say no to something, right? The ceiling won't fall and the world won't end if you're not the person who's personally responsible for every single thing that needs to happen.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. I guess where I'd like to start, oh, and it went out of my head again. You're not responsible, expectation.
Right. You're responsible for your own thoughts, feelings, and actions, but not anyone else's.
Let's talk about that for a minute, and then I remembered the other thing that I think would be really great to get into.
Sure. So often we think, well, I have to make someone else happy, or I have to meet someone else's needs. And the reality is, like Beth, for how you feel and how you manage a situation, your reactions, those are up to you. And how I feel about a situation and how I manage it, that's my responsibility. So you don't need to make me happy. In fact, you can't. Only I am the person in charge of how happy or not happy I am, or how stressed or how not stressed I am. But I also don't want to then run around in circles trying to make you. I can't make you feel, act, or think anything.
Beautiful. Okay, and that segues into the thing that I was reaching for, which is, it seems like the whole underlying premise of what you're saying, which I actually agree with, but I think we need to unpack it because I didn't used to agree with this, is my own pleasure is valuable and comes first. That evaluating something by, would this make me happy, is a legit way to evaluate something, and in fact, primary.
Completely legitimate. Absolutely. You know, we sort of joke around, if I'm not happy, then you, the rest of my family aren't happy, right? We make those jokes, but there's real truth to that, because when I'm feeling happy, fulfilled, rested, invested in my own life, then that's when I have the most energy to be able to give to other people in the most effective way. So I can be the best support to anyone when I'm in a place that I feel that I'm being supported and taking care of myself. And we tend to resist that. We tend to want to say, well, no. All these other things I have to do, or they really matter. And the example that we use a lot of the time is that classic airplane example, right? You know, the safety warning that you hear every time you get on a flight. So if we run into trouble, masks are going to fall. And if you're with someone who needs assistance or who's a child, put their mask on first. Every time I would hear that, I would think, I don't think I could do that.
Put your own mask on first.
They would they would say, put your mask on first. Right. See, look at how I say it, because in my head, I think, no, that's not true. Like, I guarantee if I'm with my child, I'm going to put theirs on first. And I began asking people about this, like, tell me the truth. What do you think? Like, what would you really do? And pretty much everybody's like, no, I'd put theirs on first. But that's the reality, is that if you don't, I can't believe I said that wrong, because if you don't put your mask on first, then oops, good chance both of you aren't making it, right? That anything that occurs, if you're not taking care of you, you're increasing the likelihood that there's going to be a negative outcome for this other person that you care about. And that's truth. We don't want to look that. We want to say, no, I should go there first. But in reality, if I can breathe, I now have the oxygen to be able to help this other person. And so we've really got to make a commitment to doing that for ourselves. And we struggle with it because it just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And yet, from a physiological, like literally how our body works and what we have available as resources, that is the right thing to do.
So you've just made crystal clear to me where I get stuck and where I think a lot of people get stuck with this, which is that there are two really important basic physiological truths going on here. One is, maybe three, we can't make anybody else feel anything, number one. Number two, if I'm in the room with people feeling grumpy and awful and picky and cynical and all of that, my mirror neurons are going to pick that up. And if I don't take very careful responsibility or even get out of there, I'm going to be grumpy and awful. And they've made me feel that way in some way, at least until I get into, okay, whoa, what just happened to me? And living with somebody or working with somebody on a daily basis who's like that can be a real challenge. So in a sense, what you were just talking about was you put your own oxygen mask on first because you need the oxygen to be able to support the other people. And my brain wants to leap to so I can make them feel better.
Right. And the reality is, you know what? We owe other people the respect to allow them to take charge of their own thoughts, feelings, and actions. Right? These are, and obviously we're not talking young children, but in the world of adults to adults, other people are responsible for what they do, and we're responsible for what we do. So if I'm the one going in being grumpy, am I likely to have an impact on other people? And I love what you said about the mirror neurons, because it's up to me to be in charge of that. Am I sort of bringing the tone of the event down? Yeah, I probably am. So that's up to me to do that. But in reality, do the other people have to buy into that? Do they have to just respond to those mirror neurons and say, ugh, you're in a crappy mood, so I'm going to be a crappy mood? No. They also have the right, and I would say the responsibility to say, just because you're having a hard day doesn't mean that I have to. Now, the exact opposite is true, and this is we don't really argue about this, but you and I were chatting before, and so if you have a good day and I'm neutral, that's likely to be a positive for me. And when I'm having a good day and you're having a good day, that's something that sort of amps us both up. And that's fantastic. So no complaints about that. You're good, I'm good, we're both even better. Wonderful. So it works in either way. And, we talked about, in some ways, how do we rewire the brain? Well, literally, the way that we rewire the brain is through repetition and resources. So if I have a particular way of dealing with things or a particular thought, and I continue to either follow that pathway, let's say in action, or continue to have that same thought, what I'm doing in my brain is strengthening that neural pathway. I'm resourcing it. So, and from our brain's perspective, whatever we repeat we strengthen. So
Mhm.
your brain is not differentiating, is this something that's going to make me happy that I'm repeating? Or is this something that's bringing me down that I'm repeating? Sort of at a very basic level, if I sit there and think, oh, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, the pathway, the literal neural pathway that says I'm stressed is being resourced or strengthened. And if I say, I'm okay, I can manage, I can manage, I can manage, then that's the pathway I'm strengthening. And we really have this ability to say, let me be aware of what's going on. Let me pause and then make a choice. What's the pathway that I want to strengthen? Right? Do I want to keep repeating and have it be a faster and faster pathway to the thing that leaves me feeling lousy? Or do I want to strengthen and really work to resource the pathway that has me feeling better? And then consequently, when we feel better, we have more energy, right? We have, I already said, more to give. So we're more productive at work. Other people appreciate being around us. We just have more fun. So I'm a really, really big fan of fun. I'm like, great. If I can laugh and if I can have fun, then that's feeding me. So even putting myself first, just to go back to that for a second, if I can find a way to laugh and to see humor, that's a little way of me putting me first that has a huge dividend. So the number one biggest hit of dopamine's that neurotransmitter that helps us feel good. The number one biggest hit of dopamine that we can get naturally is through laughter. So every time that I'm laughing, I'm reinforcing both a neural pathway. I'm taking a physiological mechanism to make me feel good. So if I'm in a grumpy mood or I'm feeling really overwhelmed, not only am I recognizing first that it's up to me to do something about it, it's not up for my family to go make me happy, right? That's up to me. But then what can I do? So one thing I can do is find laughter and find humor. So that's pretty easy. I have, in my coaching business, I had one woman I was working with who really got overwhelmed first thing in the morning by her schedule and anxiety about everything she had to do. But she loved funny cat videos on YouTube. So we made the little switch that before she started all of her to-do lists and thinking about how would she manage it, what she would do would be watch a few minutes of cat videos. She'd laugh, she'd feel relaxed, and her brain would then be in its best possible state to then look at her schedule and make a plan that was workable rather than getting into the stress mechanism and reducing her ability to actually think and plan in her best interest.
Okay, I'm just writing that down. It's beautiful. What can you do if you get overwhelmed first thing in the morning? What do you need to do to find some laughter?
Find laughter.
Okay.
Absolutely, right? And that's in fact, you can even create laughter by fake laughing. Which sounds so funny, right? But if you sit there, and that's what laughter yoga is based on, but literally, if you start laughing and you keep at it, putting aside probably the internal awkwardness that you likely feel about it, but if you do that, then you'll notice that you naturally begin laughing, right? So it allows you to lighten up. So I can say, ha, 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 ha. And at some point, I'm just laughing because I can even recognize it sounds a little silly to just be doing some fake laughter. Mm-hmm. The primary tools that I use with people, and it doesn't matter if this is in the coaching work I do or in clinical psychotherapy or just my conversations with my friends and colleagues, the tools that I want to recommend are things that are accessible, that are free or low cost, and that are not obtrusive, right? Because I think what we want to do is we want to shift where we're feeling and thinking, but we don't really want to call attention to ourselves, right? So I'll give you an example, and I'll even do a silly thing that will hopefully give you a really clear idea about this. So we talk a lot about breathing. Breathing is a great strategy that I recommend to people, and I will teach what I think is an effective form of breathing.
Ooh, let's do it.
So let me give you the silly part first, because I will
okay.
speak that over with, right? So often someone will say, well, take a deep breath. So I've seen people do something like this. I'm like, no, right? Isn't that silly? Like, no, that is not unobtrusive. And that's not what we mean by a deep breath. With the thing I was just doing, aside from the whole risk of hyperventilating, I was increasing my stress or my discomfort or my anxiety, right? I was sending a message to the limbic center in my brain to say, something's not good here. I was literally taking tension and amping it up. So that's not what I meant. But here is a breathing strategy that anyone can use, that it's not going to be like there's a spotlight on you saying, look, she's doing stress relieving breathing, right? It's something that you can do super quietly, unobtrusively, and it makes such a difference. And it's called square breathing. So the way that it works is, and I'll walk you through it and then I'll demonstrate it. But you inhale for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 4, you exhale for a count of 4, and you hold for a count of 4. That's it. Now I say a 4 because less than that, you're likely to be breathing more from your chest, which we just said, that's more likely to increase anxiety. And longer than that, hey, if you're going to try to do a square and sort of, maybe you can inhale for 7, but to hold for 7 counts can feel like a really long time. So 4 is something that people can manage when they're anxious, when they're distracted. Like 4 is something that we can pretty much all do, right? And so that allows us to take in that deeper diaphragmatic breath so that we're really inflating our lungs. Along with this, what I suggest is that you draw the square while you're doing it. So you can draw it on your hand or on the desk in front of you if you're seated, or on your leg. And the reason I say that is you're adding another dimension of sensory component, the touch dimension, right? And what you're doing in this square breathing is you're calming your limbic system. You're the breath and the slowing down, you're activating the vagal nerve system. You're really saying, hey, instead of being agitated, it's okay. But by doing the motion of the square, that takes a little teeny bit of cognitive ability. It accesses your prefrontal cortex, and that's the part of your brain that really helps to calm your limbic system. So by doing both of those, and nobody's seeing you, don't do this. That's just weird. Don't do that. No, right? But you can do it in front of you. So I'll do a round of this and you can just see what it looks like, right? So that's it, right? Did that look really weird? No, like, if we weren't paying attention to what I was doing, you wouldn't even notice. I'd just be in a room doing that, right? And so literally, and if I want me to walk you through around, just do it how I teach.
Let's do it. Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna see if I can walk my fingers around.
Yeah. And when I'm actually teaching, I do this motion, although I don't say to people, keep doing that, but so that there's something that you can focus on while you're learning. All right, here we go. So in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. That's it.
It takes a little practice. Yeah.
And you're trying to do it so that, the camera can see it, but it's a little bit easier when you're just sort of doing it in front of you, right? Because you just think, count, 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 count. Now, for anyone who's interested, that's actually a technique that the military teach. They call it tactical breathing.
Huh.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's like a real thing. Absolutely works. So that's something, like, that's what I think of as sort of one of our super go-to methods that we have available, right? It costs us nothing. Nobody's going to notice. We're not making a big deal out of it. And we can always do it, right?
And I presume the military is teaching it for really stressful situations.
Correct. And so that people can maintain calm under stress, right? It's the exact same thing. There's also, if you like to be guided through things, another mobile app that's free that I recommend to people all the time is called Breathe to Relax. And 2 is the number 2. So it's the word breathe, the number 2, and relax. And that's a great app, aside from the fact that it's free. But you can pick your background and you can pick the length of your inhale and the length of your exhale. So it's not square, it's just in and out, right? But it's a slower breathing. But the part I like best about it, and that encourage people to use is there's a little, like a container. As you're inhaling, the container fills up. And as you're exhaling, the container empties. So that helps you. Again, we reference mirror neurons with the same kind of thing. As you're seeing that, you're helping with the regulation. Or if you have an Apple Watch, I have one. It's not a promo for them. Like, they don't know about me, but I'll just say there's a breathe app on my watch. And so when it says inhale, there's a little circle and the circle gets big. And then on exhale, the circle comes down.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. So those are things that we have with us all the time, right? We can always laugh. Well, okay, maybe it's not always appropriate to laugh, but we can almost always laugh. We can certainly smile on the inside. We know that we can take actions to change how we feel, right? And to prioritize ourselves. Breathing is always accessible to us, no matter what. And one of the other things, these are the basics, right? And this is going to be true, not just holiday stress, but really make certain as you're going into the holidays, you want to make sure that you eat well, sleep well, and move your body. That's the foundation for everything, but there's really good brain science about it.
Absolutely.
So if you don't get enough sleep, you're tired and cranky the next day, but you're more likely to then respond with that stress response, right? Because when we sleep is when all of the neurotransmitters that function in our body, they get replenished. So you want to get a decent night's sleep. Same thing about eating. We need to fuel our body, right? No matter how we think about the bucket, we've got to refill the bucket. And then moving our body, here's a super cool thing. I mean, not only does it just make sense, like, great, we feel good if we do something active. Absolutely true. And we all know you can get dopamine, endorphins, get all that positive stuff from moving your body. But in fact, there are literally ways to enhance cell growth and that rewiring process in our brain by being involved in active exercise. So literally, just as one small example, if I'm involved in vigorous physical exercise, doesn't have to be forever, and vigorous is based on the person. It's not like there's just one standard. But if I'm actually moving, maybe it's weeding, right? Like an intense weeding session, that can be pretty vigorous, at least in my yard, right? Vigorous exercises increases the availability of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Why does that matter? BDNF is major in terms of resilience and neurogenesis, or cell growth. So how do we want to make a new brain pathway? By repeating. Do we want more cells to sort of resource and strengthen that pathway? Yes. So it's beyond common sense, but it's also true. So if you move well, you eat well, you sleep well, you bring in laughter, you make sure that you're very near the top of your list, and you utilize breathing, you've got a whole host of strategies that are going to position you much better to be not getting into compassion fatigue or burnout or overwhelm, and to get back out of those states.
Wow. I feel like I could talk to you all day about this. There's been so much already that you've packed in. This is an interview I'm going to watch again, I think, and then a lot of folks are going to watch again. This is really excellent stuff. And I'm sorry, but I need to bring us to a close. And I know you have an offer also for us.
Oh, yes. Yes, I would be delighted to send people a copy of my most recent bestseller, Be Awesome, Banish Burnout, Create Motivation from the Inside Out. This is probably not the paperback copy, but I'm happy to send people an electronic copy of that, absolutely, or answer any other questions that are related to this. And as a special bonus, I have an additional worksheet on what are some steps to both increased happiness and resilience. Because if there's anything else that we need around the holidays, we need happiness and resilience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that is a basket of gifts right there. Just wonderful. And this whole interview has been a basket of gifts. Kristina Hallett, I thank you so much for taking your time and your wonderful energy to share those tips with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is so much fun. You can see I could talk about this stuff all day long, because I really believe what we're doing is making the world better, one person at a time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right.